Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. Using an AWS EC2 instance as the cloud server to host a website comes with many benefits. It provides full control over the server, just like your personal computer. It is also easily scalable in terms of computational capacity. AWS also provides useful dashboards for performance monitoring and optimization of the EC2 instances. Today, we will be discussing how to cloud host a containerized website at AWS for free for up to 1 year. We will be using the free tier services EC2 and EBS of AWS to host the website. Also, we will be containerizing the website with Docker and serve it with Nginx. I hope the journey will be interesting, so let's dig in. We will first start by visiting the AWS website, aws.amazon.com/free, where all the free tier services of AWS are categorized. So let's go there and we will immediately see this Amazon EC2 option that says 750 hours per month free, and it is available for the first 12 months. As we can see that um, maximum utilization that could be possible for 1 hour, 1 month is up to 744 hours. So if we just use only one instance, we will never reach the monthly threshold, definitely. So let's select the Amazon EC2 and then we will get started with Amazon EC2. So it took us directly to the EC2 dashboard because we already have created the AWS account. If you didn't, it will ask you to create the account first. Now, at this EC2 dashboard, we see that there is no instance running. So to create one and launch it, we will click this launch instance option. It will take us to this page where we can configure the instance and then launch it. So let's configure our instance. We will first give our instance a name. Let's say web server. So the site that I am going to launch today is service.analyticalman.com. That's why, in short, SAM, that's I'm going to use as the name for this instance. But you are free to use whatever name you prefer. Then we will be selecting the operating system for our instance. Here we can see that the Ubuntu operating system is a free tier eligible one, and it is good enough for us for this tutorial. So we will keep the Ubuntu operating system selected here. Then we will be selecting the instance type. The free tier T2 micro instance is already selected here, as we can see. However, there are many other instances available to choose from, which may not be free tier eligible. However, and there is one point to mention here that the 2 micro instance itself is not very powerful. It only has one virtual CPU with 1 gigabyte of memory. It has 3.3 gigahertz clock speed of the processor, and the processor itself is Intel Xeon family processor of Core i3 architecture. Therefore, it is not significantly powerful to host a very large website or an application. However, it is good enough to host a small scale application or a blog site or a portfolio website, things like that. Small stuff. So then we can go to create or select a key pair. We will be selecting key pair if there is already created some, or we will be creating a new one. We will give the key pair a name. Let's say SAM web service. And we will be able to download that particular key. So the key pair is important to perform remote SSH or accessing to the instance remotely from your PC. And this will allow us to connect to the instance using SSH. The key that we downloaded is our own private key. Now we will go to the network setting option. Here we will be creating the security groups. The first one, which is already selected, is allow SSH traffic from anywhere. We can keep it as it is, although it is not the safest option. There are other options which are available from here, which will only restrict your current IP address of the PC that you are currently using to access through SSH. Or you can also select or insert your target IP address, which you will allow to SSH to this instance. However, for simplicity, we are now keeping it as it is. We are also selecting this allow HTTPS traffic from internet and allow HTTP traffic from internet. These are important as we will be hosting the website. So we will need to allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic so that people can search by our domain name and can connect to our server. Then finally, we will be configuring the storage by boosting the storage capacity up to 30 gigabyte because up to 30 gigabyte is under the free tier eligibility. So we can increase it up to this point. And that's it. Once all configuration are set, you can check the summary from the summary tab over at the right hand side. You have the operating system selected as Ubuntu. The instance type itself is T2 Micro. You have the storage configured to 30 gigabyte as our EBS volume. And that's it. We will now create launch instance. It will take a couple of seconds to execute. And as we can see that it has successfully initiated. Now we can click at the ID of the instance and it will take us to the EC2 dashboard back. Here we can see the instance is status is still pending. So refresh it a bit and now it is running. If we select this instance, we will be able to check some of those details that we already configured, like the storage will show us the EBS volume details. The monitoring will show you different metrics like CPU utilization, network in, network out, etc. As we just launched the instance, there is no much data to plot, but after a couple of hours, you will be able to see all these graphs. And of course, you will be having your public IPv4 address, which you can link to your domain address, domain name, so that people can search by your domain and they will be able to connect to the server. Finally, we are ready to connect to our instance. To connect to our instance, we will simply click this connect option over here. and it will take us to this page. So as you can see, there are many ways to connect to our EC2 instance, and the SSH client is one of the most useful ones. This will allow us to use the key pair that we just created and downloaded to connect to our EC2 instance through the SSH command. Both the SSH command and the command to change the configuration of the file permission is given here. We can follow along and use the command to SSH to the instance. Now we will be connecting to the instance directly from this EC2 instance connect option, and there is an option to directly connect to our instance through this web-based interface. Let's start by running some apt commands. apt, we prefer to use sudo, I believe. Okay, it's running quite well. Once the apt update is done, we will also be performing the apt upgrade. So let's write it down. Sudo p and let's just say yes. Now it may take a couple of seconds to fully complete, so we will catch up in a moment. Okay, then we will be press OK a couple of times. That's it. apt update and upgrade is done. Now, before proceeding further, we will have a look at the architecture that we are going to deploy here to containerize the WordPress site first and then serving it with Nginx. So let's have a look at the architecture. So this is the architecture looks like. There are two basic components in this architecture, the Docker Compose and the global Nginx. The Docker Compose is the configuration for three components, the MySQL database, our WordPress, and finally the local Nginx. This configuration is also useful for deploying multiple websites in the same server. Here, we can see that there is a global Nginx which will manage all the websites that we will be hosting in this instance. The Nginx will proxy the port 80 to a unique port 8060 for this particular website. That's why whenever a particular website is required to connect to internet, it will have its unique port. And that way, we will maintain unique port for every website so that we can serve multiple websites from different ports. So that's it. The browser will search by this domain name, and it will connect to first the global Nginx of our server, and it will proxy port 80 to the unique port of this website, which is 8060, and the WordPress website will be loaded. That is the idea. So let's get started by creating the Docker Compose. Before even creating the Docker Compose, we first have to install some of those packages that we need. We will start by installing the Nginx. So let's install Nginx. this command sudo apt install Nginx. Okay, tab okay. Now let's see if Nginx is properly installed. Yeah. Now we will be installing the Docker. To install Docker, we will first have to add the Docker's official GPG key to the key rings. We will be installing the CS certificates curl. Once that is installed, we will install the permissions required for the directory etc apt keyrings. Then we will be downloading the Docker key, the GPG key, and put it in our keyrings directory. Once that is done, let's change the permission of the keyring file using this chmod command. Once that is done, then let's add the key repository to the apt sources by this command, and then we will run the apt-get update time. That's it. Then we can now install all the Docker packages required from this apt-get command. So we will be installing the Docker C, Docker IO, Docker build X plugin, and Docker compose plugin. Let's go ahead and hit OK, tab OK. That's it. Docker is installed. To check, let's just type Docker version. It is installed. Now we need to install Docker compose as well from the apt command. Let's say sudo apt install Docker compose. Yes. And hit OK a couple of times. And that's it. The Docker compose is also installed. Let's check its version to confirm. Compose version. It is also installed. Then what we can do now is to prepare the Docker config file. Okay, now to create the Docker config files, we will first create the repository. So let's make a directory, make dir. Then the folder name could be the domain name, the service dot, and now what we can do, can go there, Now we are in. Now it is empty, but we will be first creating the Docker Compose YML file by using a nano command. Compose YML. Now we will be writing the configurations here. I'm copying the configuration now over here. All these resources I will add at the bottom of this video in the description section so that you guys can follow along. We have three services: the database, which is a MySQL database, and you can give the container name according to your wish. The volume will be the var/lib/MySQL. Environment is MySQL database is WordPress. Then the inf file will contain some of these credentials for this database, which we will be creating in a minute. Then in the WordPress section, the WordPress service will have all the WordPress details. By the way, you see these variables over here. All these variables will be defined in the environment file, which we will create in a minute. Finally, we will have this web server, which is our Nginx image that we will be downloading is this one. We are setting the container name as our website name, and we are proxying the internet port 80 to 8090, which is, or let's say 8060 in this case. Which is a unique port for our web service. You see, two volumes will be added to this web service. One is the WordPress, which will, the directory which will contain all the WordPress files. It is important because it will serve the WordPress site itself. And another important data is the Nginx configuration, because it will have all the configuration details of this local Nginx, which we will also be creating in a minute. And that's it. Once all the services are defined, let's just save it. Control X, yes, hit enter. Now our Docker Compose.yml is ready. Once the Docker Compose YML is ready, let's create the environment. So we will write nano.env, and we will define the variables over here: MySQL root password, MySQL password, and MySQL user. The passwords are kept simple here, but you can change it according to your necessity. Then just save it. Yes. And then finally, we will be creating the configuration file for Nginx. To do that, let's create a directory first. Dir conf. Let's okay. Now let's get into the directory. Once you are in, we will create the configuration file. So nano index.conf. Oh, sorry. Then we will paste the configuration of Nginx over here. As we can see, it simply listens to port 80 and serve this website. And there are other essential configuration for WordPress is added here. Link to all these files will be in the description. Let's save this now. Yes. Now we can go back and our configuration file is prepared for Nginx. So let's now compile the Docker Compose file with this Docker Compose up command. It will create the containers, Docker containers for the three services that the Docker Compose file contains. So let's start. So the database container, the Nginx container, which is the web server, and the WordPress container is now being downloaded. And after that, they will be created. The images are now being downloaded. And then they are created and the containers have started. So let's check them out with the docker ps command sudo ps. There we are. We have 3 containers up and running. Now all we have to do is to connect this particular IP address of our instance to our domain. So my domain is at Namecheap. So I will now go there and connect the domain to this particular IP address. So now we have entered the control panel of our domain, which is the Namecheap platform. Here, I already have a domain analyticalman.com. So I will be now creating a subdomain and map it to the IP address of this EC2 instance. So let's give the host name, which is in our case service, the service.analyticalman.com. So the host name is here service, and the IP address is exactly what we have here. So let's copy it and then paste it here. And then all we have to do is to save all these changes. Once done, then checking whether this subdomain service.analyticalman.com is now connected to this particular IP address. Let's go to the browser and search by your website name. And there we go. It connected to the global Nginx. However, it is not yet connecting us to the website, the WordPress site that we just containerized and launched, because this global Nginx that we installed in that instance is not configured yet to connect to that WordPress. So now let's go back and configure the global Nginx so that it can connect to our containerized website. To do so, let's go back to our command prompt, and here to configure the global Nginx, we will go to the site available option, site available directory, which is here, etc/nginx/site available. There, for the website service.analyticalman.com, we'll be creating configuration file. And this configuration file, I'm pasting now. This configuration file will be telling exactly what we want is listen to port 80. If the server name is service.analyticalman.com, then proxy it to this 8090 port of the localhost. That way, we will be able to connect to the Nginx. But I'm sorry, there is one mistake. In our case, it is 8060. So let's keep it 60. And save it. X, Y, enter. I see. Because, so I'm going no to edit anything here. You need sudo permission. Can paste, I believe. Yeah. And save it. X, yes, oh, saved. Now, once the configuration file is created, the next task is to create a soft link between the site enabled and site available. Currently, we are at site available directory. We will now go to site enabled directory, and then we will create a soft link between these two directories using this command. It will create a soft link between site available and site enabled. Once that is done, then let's go back to site available. And then now check if the configuration setup is all right. Yeah. NGINX is saying that configuration setup is all right. So now simply restart the Nginx. That's it. Now Nginx knows, the global Nginx knows that if port 80, the Ethernet port, receives the request for service.analyticalman.com, it needs to proxy it to the port 8060. So for the simplicity, let's go back to where we were initially. And if you check the Docker Compose right now over here, no need to edit, just need to see. So we can use a cat command. And there we go. Port 80 is forwarded to 8060. That's it. The global Nginx configuration is done. So let's refresh this page now. And voila, you are connected to WordPress. Before we conclude, there is one more thing that we might need to consider is that the website is still not secure. So to secure this website, we might need to install a certbot library in our EC2 instance, which will allow HTTPS traffic to our website and make our website secure. So let's do that. Let's jump back to our command prompt and copy the code for certbot. This command will now download certbot and install it. That's it. Once certbot is installed, let's create a soft link. And now we can apply certbot to our Nginx. And it will ask you to provide your email address. You can provide your valid email address to proceed forward. Once you are done inserting your email address, it will forward you to this prompt where you can select your website. For our case, there is only one website, and we selected the serial number for that, and it installed the certbot, the certification for this particular website. Now we go back to our WordPress site, refresh this page, and there we go. The website is now secured. Now let's check again with service.analyticalman.com, but with HTTPS, and that's it. The website is now secured. Thank you for being with us. I hope you have enjoyed the journey, and in the upcoming tutorials, we will learn more about installing multiple websites in the same server, or even installing a web application, probably based on Python or JavaScript. So let's keep up the good work, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe.